I've kind of built up this persona of being this real life Tony Stark, Captain America, Batman kind of character. We did $1 million in 1 week. Kids who look up to me think I have the best life ever. Sometimes I don't even like the life I have.
That's one of the most honest things I've heard.
The pressure and the stress. The actual cost to make the video, over 100 grand, 5.5 million, just on the building.
How can you inspire the next generation if you go bankrupt?
It's a great question. You aren't a business if you do everything yourself.
Nobody's talking about what you just said. You were mentored by Grant Thompson. He was a huge YouTuber before he passed.
I still have some of the last texts he sent me. He beat YouTube. It's very rare to do.
Can I ask you a more personal question? Are you a shitty entrepreneur?
I think so.
Why?
You're very good at what you do.
Oh my God. James, the Hacksmith. Dude, thanks for having me at your studio.
My pleasure.
I mean, I'm saying studio, but it's really an 18-acre campus. I mean, how much do you spend on this place again?
Probably about 5.5 million just on the building.
Oh my God. And how many employees do you have working for you on your YouTube channel?
27 full-time right now.
I have so many questions that I want to get into. You're known as a hacksmith to your 14 million subscribers, but to me, you're kind of like a combination of a real-life Iron Man crossed with Luke Skywalker, because you've done so much in your 18 years on YouTube that so many creators can learn from. You set a world record for having the world's first retractable lightsaber, but I want to set context because right now we're in your 18-acre campus. So why do you need that much space to make YouTube videos?
It was always part of the master plan. I wanted to have a space where it didn't matter what kind of project we were working on, we'd have the room and the resources to do it. So even from the garage, and the garage was obviously a very big garage.
Yeah. That was your space before this.
2 spaces before this, actually. And it was a dream workshop, but we always wanted to do more, do bigger things and whatnot.
Yeah.
So when we finally found this property, it was perfect. Lots of outdoor space, lots of building, lots of room to develop future buildings, because I'm calling it a campus. I need a few more buildings to really call it a campus. So I've been working on building up HERC. So it stands for the Hacksmith Engineering Research Campus, because as we know from comic books, every cool organization needs a neat acronym. And this building, every little detail, all the interior design, thinking about what it would be like to walk through here as a kid, as someone who's interested and inspired by the movies and wants to make a brighter future.
Dude, I mean, the operation that you've built here on top of YouTube, also, I think you're pushing the boundaries when it comes to engineering. And also, if I'm being honest, James, I think you're criminally underrated. Like, it just boggles my mind. Like, I had to fly all the way out here to, the suburbs of Toronto to just see what was going on. It's blown my mind, like the tour that we did yesterday. Before we get into all the things that you're doing to really push YouTube and the engineering world forward, I want to talk about a video that you made that got 40 million views and got the fire department called on you.
Yeah.
And that was the video where you made the world's first ever working lightsaber. Why did you want to make a lightsaber, and talk about that process?
So it was kind of the moonshot where it's like, man, if we could make a real life lightsaber, that'd be pretty incredible. And it was actually my business partner who came up with the first concepts for it. So we actually started with a essentially superheated metal stick that literally glowed white hot. So it was more of a yellow-orange beam. The neat thing with that was you could actually duel with it. It could cut through things, not very fast. Yeah. But the big downside was it wasn't retractable. And that's like one of the main things for a lightsaber.
Yeah.
So then as we continued working on that, I think it was Bogdan and I who discovered the laminar flow gas nozzle, and we're like, wow, that beam looks like a lightsaber. It's even blue. And we bought a few. They're very expensive, like $4,000 or $5,000 just for the nozzle, because it's a really difficult to manufacture part. And then we set to work making it into more of a lightsaber.
And that project has now taken hundreds of thousands of dollars to make. And now you have a clean room where you're trying to make one that's cordless.
Yeah.
Which I want to talk about how you fund all this with the volatility of YouTube and how you've built this business. Because I think no matter if you're an engineer or not, like if you're trying to be a creator, there's a ton that you could learn from your 18 years on the platform. But I want to rewind back to I think like just a moment that would have given me a ton of anxiety, which was when, before you were even making products that were from the movie screens, you were working a day job where you were literally making movie screens.
Yeah.
You're working for a company that made digital projectors. You're an engineer there. Take me through that moment where you're like, you know what? I'm going to do YouTube.
I actually asked my manager if I could potentially work part-time, like take a pay cut, work part-time so I could focus more on YouTube. And he said yes. And then moved up to the director of engineering, and he said yes. And it went up to the senior director of engineering, and he said yes. We don't want to lose Hobson. But then it hit the VP of engineering and the human resources department. And they're like, whoa, we can't make an exception for one person. Then everyone's going to want to work part-time. And I'm actually glad they said no to me, because that was enough for me to make the leap of faith.
Yeah.
And I handed in my resignation that next Monday. I'm like, see ya. I had about 6 months of savings. I pulled out my RRSP, which is the equivalent of a 401k. And I had about 6 months to make it.
If I recall, like I pulled up the numbers, you only had 70,000 subscribers at the time.
Oh yeah, we were not making it. I was making $100 a month off ad revenue. Yeah, luckily I had a part-time job as a writer for Hackaday. I wrote over 1,000 articles for that website between 2013 and 2017, and I also had an Etsy store where I sold laser engraved cutting boards.
Oh wow.
So I did have a few side hustles that kind of helped maintain some of my bills, but YouTube really needed to grow to be able to let me actually really do it full time.
Yeah.
And that summer we had our first viral hit, which was the Captain America Electromagnet Shield.
Yeah.
And we went from 100,000 subscribers to 500,000 in 1 month. And that kind of set off the chain reaction for the channel, where we doubled in size year over year for 4 years in a row, from subscribers, views, employees, revenue, sponsorships, pretty much everything. And experiencing that kind of exponential growth as a business is a great problem to have. Like, I'm very grateful for it. But the challenge when everything is growing like that, you don't necessarily build the best processes or the best system. And you almost get tunnel vision, because it's just like, well, YouTube's our golden goose and what we're doing is working. But the way we do those things wasn't necessarily sustainable or the proper way. So after the pandemic, which is when our channel kind of slowed down and a little plateaued for a little while, suddenly some of those weak points emerged. And it was just like, oh man, this is not, maybe we should have done a few things differently.
Like what? What are some of those things in those early days you wish you set up a process for, you wish you did differently?
I'd say the biggest one, which is a challenge for all YouTubers, is if you really want to expand your business, you need to involve more people. And when you're a solo YouTuber, that means potentially sharing the spotlight, having other hosts on your videos and whatnot, and building up an audience for the whole thing, the company, I guess, instead of just one person. And we have historically, I always give credit to my team when they work on projects. And from the beginning, people played small roles in the videos, but it took us a while to actually try and have more like dedicated videos where I wasn't actually involved at all. And the hard part with YouTube is YouTubers are made, they're not found, they're not created per se. You have to go through that process of being the producer, the director, the videographer, the host, all of those things in one. So when you try and businessify it, I don't know if that's a word, it's very difficult, because you can't just throw a new person in front of the screen and expect them to be a YouTuber. Yeah. It's not like a news anchor where you can just throw someone else on stage and they can read the teleprompter. Yeah. You gotta build them up. And that's definitely been the biggest challenge that we've had of not replacing me, but adding more of the team to the roster, which doesn't create additional work for me, because the only way to scale a business is to well, in general, make more content, and my time is very limited. And the other biggest challenge that we had, like we chose one of the hardest things to do on YouTube, because the engineering can take weeks or months or years, and then you make the video. That's really hard. Like, we don't have any kind of easy to make content that you could actually like schedule. I kind of wish we started a podcast years ago, because that would have been something we could make on a weekly basis. Like, I sit down and I talk to someone for a few hours.
I'm wondering, like, I pulled up your business plan from 2013, and I just wanted to call out one line in it that James stood out to me. You said, this is your master plan, quote, we want to continue trying out far out ideas and to push the envelope over just commercial viability, all while inspiring the next generation of inventors. My question to you is, how can you inspire the next generation if you go bankrupt?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the reason I had that line about commercial viability was a lightsaber is not a commercial viable product,
right?
In any sense of the word, really.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. And that doesn't mean it can't create value in another way. And especially with the lightsaber, it's inspired people to go into engineering. Because like, I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think engineering was cool. So the commercial viability line is really more just about the video series. The main goal moving forwards is, I do really like product development, and I do inspiring the next generation of kids into science, tech, engineering, the arts, math, etc. is amazing. But I have a deep down desire to like make something that also changes the world. And I don't know what that something is. But I think I have a line there about like making tools to continue to push society forwards. We haven't quite figured that out yet.
Yeah.
But as part of the plan, that's why we started the retail division. Mm-hmm. So we're starting with more simple things. We started with basic YouTuber merch, but like really high quality clothes, apparel, accessories, and we're moving into Hacksmith tools. That's really actually just a learning exercise for us. It's learning how to manufacture things. It's learning how to do logistics, supply chain management, etc. So when we finally do come up with a potential world-changing idea, we have the tools and resources to actually take it through to completion.
Yeah. I want to spend more time talking about that, the boom period when you were like, you left your job, you had your side hustles that helped fund the YouTube channel, and you were growing. What was the most uncomfortable cost or investment that you made during those early days when you were growing, but you're like, oh my God, maybe this is, maybe I'm spending a bit too much money too soon?
Yeah, so one of our most expensive random purchases was a small jet engine. It was like $5,000, and it was just like, that's like a month's salary for me when I was an engineer. I'm just gonna buy this just to mess around with. And luckily, I think the very first video we used trended on YouTube and paid for it. And we're just like, whoa, maybe there's also like a niche of unique stuff that not many people have. Can make good content too, especially if you add some engineering to it and whatnot. I think when we made the transition to the first facility, which was after the garage, I think the rent was like $10,000 or $15,000 a month, and that was a huge like, whoa. And as the business has grown, it's almost become, people talk about like funny money. It's just like, it stops making sense. So for example,
the money coming in from YouTube, or
no, the money you were spending.
The money your overhead.
Yeah. So like, for example, our overhead right now is over $250,000 a month.
Wow. I
couldn't spend $250,000 myself, unless I was like buying Rolexes every weekend and maybe a Ferrari every, it's inconceivable. And I think the scary part with running a business is, especially on YouTube, if you're not making videos, those costs are still there. And somehow over the years, it went from spending lots of money on projects to now we just spend lots of money on existing just existing. We do spend sometimes tens of thousands of dollars on a project, but the actual cost to make the video, if you generalize it and you just equalize it over the content produced over the overhead spent, you're looking at over $100,000 to make a video.
Wow.
And it's not, I spent $100,000 buying 20 jet engines to build some kind of flying machine. It's just, so it just disappears. And that was a really, really hard thing to, I don't think I've actually fully accepted it. It's just like, what are we doing? Like the money on YouTube can be great, but it can also, it's very up and down. So it's a little scary at times because I can't just sit back. I can't really take a break. And I've tried to take a break and it hasn't worked out well for us. Whereas if I had kept it small, if I had stayed in my garage, I could take a break because what payments do I have to worry about? The mortgage, maybe some electricity, like normal things.
Yeah.
But now that we have this huge facility, property, and resources, just the operating costs are huge. And that's a really difficult wall to be pushed up against. And sometimes it results in creating content that we can make, not that we should make. And I think that's been some of our downfall over the years, where it's just like, despite growing to the size we are, sometimes the projects we do are still relatively simple. And it's just like, well, what was the point of building all this when we're making simple things and whatnot? I wish we were just doing big projects and maybe posting monthly or bi-monthly, but each of those projects gets millions of views and that lets us keep going. But because of our high costs, we're kind of stuck in this trap where even if we wanted to try a new strategy, we don't have a pile of money to fall back on. So we can't invest in the chance of getting to that stage. So then we're stuck producing the content we're able to produce. And in some ways, some of that content is not even what our audience is hoping to see from us. We've already set the bar pretty high building real life lightsabers and the power loader from Aliens and stuff like that, where it's really challenging running an engineering business on YouTube.
What's a piece of content or like an engineering product that you made because you're forced to continue to run on this hamster wheel?
So a good example is when we do like dedicated sponsorships. Not all dedicated sponsorships are bad. The best ones are when I'm working directly with a movie studio, making something from the movie. So like the John Wick Bulletproof suit. Those ones the audience loves because it's like, whoa, the Hacksmith worked with the company that made the movie that we all love. Yeah. And that's it's a hand-in-hand partnership that makes so much sense. And I literally wish I just had closer relationships with all the movie production studios and we got to know what was coming out ahead of time and actually had time to really engineer something really cool. But over the years, since we are on that treadmill, we've taken dedicated sponsorships from some random mobile games that aren't very popular. And those are the kind of videos that you get lots of comments being like, oh, Hacksmith's a sellout. And it's just like, I'm just trying to keep food on the table for the team. And in the early days, it was okay because we had a lot of content, like weekly content for the first 7 years. So you could slide in a few dedicated sponsorships and it's kind of like, a shit sandwich. It's just like, there's lots of good stuff. And here, can you watch this too? Because that's what's paying the bills. But the problem is doing too many over the years, suddenly you've lost the reason you were doing it in the first place. And it's now we have to do these things just to exist. And the whole idea was this was never supposed to be a job. I wasn't supposed to be accountable to someone above me. And right now that someone above me is actually my company because I have to do things to make money to be able to keep everyone employed and keep things moving. So there's been a ton of challenges and that's led to burnout multiple times. I posted a video sharing some mental health struggles. Even posting that video, I feel like hurt the channel because the people who watched it heard the whole story, but the somewhat clickbait title of I think I'm done making videos if you look at the impressions on that video, it got viewed like 5 million times, but 95 million people saw the thumbnail and title.
Yeah.
So I potentially just told 95 million people, I'm done making YouTube videos. And for months, even a year after that, it's just like, oh, I thought the Hacksmith stopped making videos. It's like, what's this?
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a faux pas on my part. The video did a lot to help encourage the conversation around mental health, especially men's mental health. So I think it still had a net positive for the world, but it might have been a net negative for the business. And we're still kind of feeling some repercussions from that, where the views have kind of dropped off over the years, and it's been hard to find our stride again.
I want to talk about that video because you've since changed the title of it. So
Yeah.
now it's, about running a business on YouTube is hard versus people thinking that you left, especially in light of all the retirement and I quit YouTube videos out there right now.
Yeah,
There's one.
You only get one shot with one of these videos.
Yeah,
it's
yeah. But there was this 10-second clip that I pulled in it, James, that I think it's one of the most authentic and vulnerable moments that I've ever seen in a YouTube video. And I just wanted to have you play it and react to it. And then I had a follow-up question.
I was already burned out from pushing so hard in the garage. Guilt for building a business that I myself could not thrive in almost started overwhelming me. Almost everything seemed like a mistake, with only myself to blame. Realization that I was a shitty entrepreneur broke my confidence in my ability to move forward.
Why did you call yourself a shitty entrepreneur? I mean, you're such a smart YouTuber, engineer. Like, are you a shitty entrepreneur?
I think so.
Why? Hey guys, I want to show you another part of the Hacksmith campus. But first, I want to say thank you to Dot Store, who helped sponsor this video and do this interview all the way in Toronto, because Dot Store is a domain that so many big creators, from the Hacksmith to MrBeast to Zach King, trust, because really, you don't want to have one of those domains that goes shop.com/domain/subdomain. It just gets so confusing. With Dot Store, it's simple, it's to the point, and it's actually shown to boost sales. Because every time you advertise a merch link that's not a Dot Store, you're basically shooting yourself in the face, and you're creating a dent in your brand that you don't want to have there. Dot Store is sharp, specific, and immediately gets at what you're trying to go for. In fact, it's what we're using to launch Created.Store, our new merch store with Dot Store, the exclusive place where you can get our merch and so many new products that we're excited to develop with creators for creators. And you're in luck, because you could get your own Dot Store for only 99 cents. Make sure to check out this link below as well as in the description and use code John to get a discount at checkout. All right, now back to the video.
Just like I said, the way I ended up building the business didn't allow me to thrive, and that was the whole reason of doing all this. I wanted to make stuff, and at that point, I literally didn't even want to make things. My business partner had to force me to start developing this lab. He's just like, just start working on it.
Yeah.
This is my personal R&D lab
within your
within
18-acre
trying to
campus.
get back some of the garage days, essentially, right here. And but I was so burned out, I'm just like, I don't even want to make things, even though that's what I love and that's what I wanted to do. There's this great quote. I don't know if Marquez is the guy who actually came up with it, but I heard him say it. So, yeah. And I've repeated it a bunch since then. But he basically says being a YouTuber is like being an octopus. So you've got 8 arms and they all do different things. Someone is the director. One of your arms directs, one holds the camera, one writes, one does this, blah, blah, blah. And the problem is, when you try and turn that into a business, you inevitably have to basically give up some of your tentacles. Mm-hmm. You got to give away the camera tentacle, because now someone's going to hold the camera for you. You might give away the editing tentacle because someone's going to edit for you. And I've never fact checked this actually, but I'm hoping it's true. But apparently octopi have 3 hearts, not just one. And they aren't located in his chest. They're located in some of these tentacles. So what that means is you might be the best at 3 things. So those are the easiest things you can teach someone else, and then give them that job. And if the heart was in those arms, you've just taken away all the things that you were actually passionate about, what you had the heart for. And now you're doing the stuff that you didn't even like. And I feel like I did that way too much building this business. And then I ended up in a position where the stuff I had to do wasn't the stuff I wanted to do. And it just resulted in a lot of guilt, feeling like, wow, I really fucked this up. Like, this is supposed to be a dream job. Like, the kids who look up to me think I have the best life ever. It's just like, why, like, sometimes I don't even like the life I have because of the pressure and the stress I have. And it feels like if I went a different path, it could be different. And I'm trying to get back on track, but it's a huge challenge because now we have this huge complicated machine that is the business, and we don't have the flexibility to truly like other examples when YouTubers have taken breaks. Sometimes they just actually like fuck off for a year or months, and then they come back with renewed energy. I can't really fully do that because the business isn't sustainable without me, and I risk losing everything I've built essentially. And I've already seen that happen multiple times where it's just like I've stepped back and it hasn't worked. And it hasn't worked because obviously we haven't built the right system, the right processes, the right way of doing things that is either scalable or sustainable. And that makes it really hard.
How many employees work for you right now?
I think the current count is 27. So the retail team is 4 people here.
And you have about 50 retail products that you sell right now.
Yeah. And then we have a team of about 6 engineers. We've got a shop team of 4. The shop team manages facilities here, but also works on projects. In addition to that, we have human resources, IT. We have a company chef who makes incredible food for us every single day. There's my business partner, our head of business development. We've got an accountant.
Do you regret growing too fast, too quickly?
Yeah. There's hindsight's 20/20, but there's a lot of things I would have done differently. There's a world where I could have stayed in the garage. There's a chance we could have still gotten the new facility, but maybe that's a facility behind the scenes. Because the other huge thing that we lost when we moved from the garage to a big facility was we were no longer relatable. It was no longer, you couldn't imagine yourself in your dad's garage making these crazy projects because now we were in a shiny, fancy, clean facility. We almost set ourselves up for failure by trying to be the real life Stark Industries. When that's setting the bar so high, we can never even reach it. We're never going to build an Iron Man suit just like the movies. The physics doesn't work out. Our lightsaber is never going to be exactly like the movies. The physics doesn't work out. Physics is our biggest enemy, really. But there's a world where we could have kept the garage as a set and continued making things. There's also a world where I could have hosted everything, but had teams of engineers making the projects. And I'm kind of like a celebrity chef where I pull out the finished goods from the oven and say I made it. But from the start, I've wanted to give everyone who works on these projects credit for what they've done. But from a business standpoint, it's so much easier to just have one character that you build an audience around. And there probably would have been a sustainable way to do that. Other channels have done this. I don't regret not doing that because I think that's kind of disingenuous to take credit for stuff that you haven't done or make it seem like you take credit. Like sometimes you can like give credit, but it's kind of like an afterthought, or it's just like if you weren't paying attention fully, it's like, oh wow, the Hacksmith made this and the Hacksmith made that. And it's just like, no, the team made this, the team made that. And the way you present that really has an impact on how people interpret it.
Yeah.
But from a strictly business sense, I bet it probably would have panned out much better. It's much easier to have maintained that real life Tony Stark vibe. And it's just like, wow, the Hacksmith can do anything. It's like, yes, the Hacksmith can do anything with this team of 25 engineers behind him, you know?
Who are some of those other channels you mentioned that have done this one host thing well?
I mean, I'm not going to name names, but Disingenuous channels out there where it's like you're presenting one thing, but it's actually completely different. And I wouldn't want to be them. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. I wouldn't want to have built this lie, essentially.
Yeah.
Because it's yeah.
Because if you build something like, for example, like you know, Thor's Mjolnir or Thor's Stormhammer, like you're showing you building it versus if somebody on your team built it, you're having them in the video with you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and for some small things, like 99% of the time, they're either shown or the credit is given. There are some things where it's just like, what we talk about is like, it's like being a ghost engineer. It's like being a ghost writer. There is work that needs to be done to enable this other thing. And if you think about it, as a company, as a business, and as a job, that's just a job. Lots of people have jobs like that. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's the only way to make that work in some cases.
And just so I'm understanding and thinking about like YouTubers who aren't just thinking about engineering, it almost seems like you have to go towards one of two extremes. You either have to be the main host and then build up a team while still making it look like you're small and in a garage or somewhere that's relatable, but it's still you presenting.
Yeah.
Or you have to go towards the other extreme and have co-hosts.
Yeah, and build up a team.
Build up a team and are at the same level and on camera with you so that if you want to take a step back, that co-host has enough of a relationship with the audience to continue and give you time off.
Exactly.
And you felt like you did in the middle, which is why you can't really do either or take time off, and why you feel a lot of that burnout. Did I, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that a good summary?
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like so many YouTubers are stuck in the middle like that.
Because it's a risk trying to build up other people, part of the team. If you think about like at the purely raw sense, built up the first 10 million subscribers, mostly around me. That's very hard. You can't just be like, this is Joe.
Right.
You should be fans of Joe. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You have to bring Joe in. And it's like, oh, who's that guy? Oh, I recognize that guy. Oh, he's hosting his own video. Oh, cool. And we have done that to some degree of success, but not in a robust enough way that has enabled me to really take time off. And the thing that kills me most is over the past few years, my contribution to videos has been almost the bare minimum, which isn't enough. It's all that I've had to give. It's not even adding the value that it should be because it's not even my video. I'm not producing it. I'm not telling the story.
Can I ask you a more personal question? You were mentored by Grant Thompson, and he was a huge YouTuber before he passed in a tragic paragliding accident. I know when I worked at YouTube, he was one of those big creators who always took time out and talked to me and just gave me advice as I tried to go from corporate to trying this creator thing. You have one of your rooms in your campus here named after Grant Thompson. Can you talk about some of the advice he gave? Because he was one of the biggest YouTubers, the king of random channel that he started.
King of YouTube.
But he made a lot of products. He was able to hire a team. He did so much. What was some of the advice he gave? Because he seemed to have a process around so much, and I feel like if he was still alive today, he would be teaching so many other YouTubers. So I'm curious, what are some of the things you've learned, or some of the things that you're still trying to learn from what Grant taught you?
I, like every other starting YouTuber out there, was making my own videos and whatnot, and shamelessly asked him for a collab, because that's what all small YouTubers do. He actually took time out of his day to reply to my email. I still have it somewhere. And he basically told me fairly general advice, like focus on making the best videos you can. And I think one of the closing lines was, when it comes time to do a collab, you won't have to ask. And he basically fulfilled that prophecy, because I think it was when I was at 1 million or 2 million subscribers, one day I got this phone call and the caller ID said Grant Thompson. And he was calling me to ask if he could come visit, because he was inspired by the videos I was doing. And that started a fairly, sadly, short friendship. But it meant so much, like basically meeting your hero and then hearing what you're doing is what they wanted to do. So even though I'd like to say he beat YouTube, and it's very fucking rare to do, because he formed the processes in place and hired co-hosts Nate and Callie. And in the beginning, the audience rebelled. They're like, we want to see Grant, you're not the king of random. But they kept pushing and ended up getting to the point of doing better than when he ran the channel. And he essentially retired. And the reason he was able to do that was he talked a lot about a book that I've read now called The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth. And basically what the book says is you aren't a business if you do everything yourself. There's a really powerful quote of 1% of small businesses succeed. So out of every 100 entrepreneurs, only one makes it. But 99% of franchise owners do succeed. And that's because besides having an existing brand, franchises have a playbook. This is how we do things. This is the process to make a Big Mac. This is how we hire people. This is how you do this. And what the book goes on to say is basically, as an experiment, even if you have no plans of ever selling your business, I need to provide the instructions on how to run it. And doing that exercise of turning everything you do into a process that is recreatable enables you to actually start stepping back, because it actually lets you give lasting knowledge to then the people who have to do that job versus this is kind of how I do things. And whatnot. So he really took that book to heart, and he created processes of how do we come up with ideas for videos? How do we edit videos? What's the standard process? And Ian and I went to visit him. I think it was probably November 2017. We learned a lot from him and tried to apply a lot of those things, making some processes and whatnot. Once he succeeded in stepping back from YouTube, he essentially retired, and he started spending time with his family again. He started going on vacations. He started enjoying life. He started picking up hobbies that he had dropped years ago. Sadly, one of those was paragliding, which resulted in him losing his life. But he beat YouTube, and he in those 2 years, I'm sure he lived a lifetime of more than most people do. And I still have some of the last texts he sent me, because he always tried to mentor me. And a lot of them were talking about how I'm so burnt out. And he had been through it all, because he almost quit multiple times. But he pushed through, and he made a lot of sacrifices in the beginning when he was growing his channel. Like,
do you still look back at those texts?
I do.
Do you feel comfortable reading any of them, or?
I could take a look. That's good advice, and I think it honors his memory. So I was talking about being burned out and whatnot, and then he said, our opportunities started getting so big I could foresee losing my whole life to them. And while we could be ridiculously rich and famous, I always tried to think about the purpose of why I was working so hard. What was the point? And since we had already had enough money to achieve every goal I set out to achieve, it would be counterproductive to do more, because I would miss my kids growing up, grow away from my wife, and delay all the passions I wanted to explore until I was too old to enjoy them. So he pulled the trigger, talking about stepping back from YouTube and letting someone else run it, and made the decision that we made it. And we didn't have to go to the next level, because we had already arrived. Now the quality of life is through the roof, and happiness has never been better. And I probably could have made that point a long time ago, and might be a lot happier today.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I have so many fond memories of Grant, and just
he was incredible.
Yeah.
And he would always take time to go out and meet fans. He never let fame get to his head. And I try and honor that. I always say yes to photos, autographs.
Yeah. Is there any other process thing you've learned either from Grant or like anyone else? I mean, one thing that stood out to me as we did like our tour all around your campus in this office is that you have cameras ready to go. Like for some, I don't know, I get anxiety around like the setup time of filming, and inspiration can be so fleeting that I find like the fact that now it's like everything is set up and you get ready to go, maybe something that like you didn't have like earlier.
Yeah, so that was a big pain point because in the garage days, often I would just set up a tripod.
Yeah.
Or Ian would film.
Yeah.
While we're working on something. And it meant we could work late into the night on whatever project, wherever. And when this became more of a business, suddenly everything was 9 to 5. And you had to make sure that you scheduled time to have someone there to film you and whatnot. And the problem with, especially my process, I have ADHD. Sometimes I hyper focus on things, and it's all I want to do.
Yeah.
But that's not possible if that hyper focus comes at 2 a.m. So one of the things that I've done in my personal lab, which I'm going to do a tour video hopefully fairly soon, is I've actually got 4K PTZ cameras, a dozen of them spread throughout here. And I actually...
Yeah, they're watching us right now. Yeah.
I've actually got this custom production tablet that I made. It uses a V-mount battery. It'll last for 8 hours. And from this, I can control all the cameras. I can change the angles. I have clean wireless audio. Everything's piped back to my PC. And the hope... I finished building this system like 6 months ago. I still haven't made a video in here yet, really. But the hope is I'll be able to get back to what I love, which is actually making things and even doing some of the recording process myself. And this was one of the ways that I'm trying to reduce the friction in making content, because I can just work and I know there'll be footage. I probably still don't want to go through all that footage. I'll probably hire someone or let someone else do the assembly cut. But then I imagine I will probably be putting the story together.
Yeah.
Because one of the other biggest challenges with becoming a business is when YouTubers wear all the hats, it's easy because there's one decision maker. You have an idea of what you're doing, how you want to present it, all this.
Right.
When you hire an editor and if you let them do everything, who's telling the story? Is it the person who's actually doing the thing? Or is it the editor's interpretation of the story based on what he filmed? And it's a very subtle difference. But people can notice it because there's a difference between a YouTuber who still produces everything that he makes and a business where multiple people are giving feedback. It's a collaborative effort. And sometimes that can work.
Yeah.
But I think at the heart of YouTube, it's you telling the story. And the biggest challenge we had with trying to have co-hosts and create essentially other YouTubers is, well, technically it's the engineer's story, but the editor's putting it together. And unless they're working side by side super close, which we've tried to promote and tried to encourage, it still kind of becomes this back and forth that isn't actually the whole story. So even when I work on a project, I end up wanting to take more control of the edit because I have this vision of how the video is going to be because it's my story to tell. And the biggest thing with storytelling is you can tell someone else's story, but it's never as impactful as when you tell your own story.
Yeah.
If you're not the one creating the piece of content, your story can get twisted and become different. Sometimes it can work. I think that's why you'll see that a lot of the big YouTubers are still extremely connected to that process.
Yeah.
one of the things we're trying to do as a source of more sustainable content is what we like to call one-day builds. So you got essentially 12 hours to make a project and film a video. We haven't had many one-day builds do super well, but I'm hopeful they can become a recurring source of content for us, because and even if it doesn't, it helps teach the team how to make a YouTube video essentially. Because the beauty with a one-day build is you have the set footage. You were there the entire story. There is nothing you missed, and you can then take that and create a video. The challenge we run into so much with our content is when the engineering takes weeks or months or years. It doesn't matter how passionate you were about the idea at the start, it's going to start dragging on. And now you have gigabytes or even terabytes of footage. The amount of different ways you could weave that story now. It's like the multiverse. It's just like there's all these different paths. Whereas a one-day build, it's kind of like it's mostly one path. Because you either just include all the footage, and that is the true, fully true story, and you can create that story. But when anything extends past a week or past a month, suddenly it's like, well, we could refilm this and go this way. We could do that. And I think you also get a lot of decision fatigue when you have way too many possibilities, because then you start second guessing yourself. It's just like, how do I make a banger video? And you're like, oh, well, let's do it this way. And sometimes it's like, we have a good idea. It's like, oh, this has a much better chance. All right, let's refilm all this and do it that way. And you're just kind of, I don't know, painting yourself into a corner where you're overwhelmed with possibilities. And again, if it's a collaborative effort, those possibilities are even greater because everyone has their own idea. This should be a dream job for everyone working here. We have incredible resources, benefits. The amount of comments we get where it's like, I wish I could work for that. The amount of applications we get. This should be a dream job. And I think the most ironic part of me building all this was I created a dream job for engineers, but it's not my job. The engineers get to focus on just one project. I would love to focus on a project. But even when I focus on a project, it's like I have to focus on 10 different projects. And that's part of the reason why I'm not thriving, because I can't.
I think there's so much to unpack there. One, I love the idea of experimenting with new formats. You know, you having your hero format with Marvel, like, and the make it real, like, and then I think one-day builds, it actually reminds me a lot of my interview with Dude Perfect, because they had their trick shots, which takes so much time, and there's so much uncertainty to see if they're going to land, you know, that basketball like being thrown at the top of the stadium, in addition to a lot of shots in one video. But then they introduced a comedy format, which is stereotypes, and, you know, they moved into that. So I think what you're talking about just speaks to me at my core, because I think every creator needs to have hero content and hub content. The hub keeps people coming back regularly, but it's also easy to produce. That could even be just a podcast format. And the hero content is the once a month, once a quarter, we're going all out. But inevitably, that is so hard to produce. And if your hero content becomes your hub content, that's a recipe for disaster.
Unless you're MrBeast.
Unless you're MrBeast, who's an outlier for all of that. I want to ask you all about your sponsorships business, because I think working with movie studios, like the fact that you work with, you know, big IP like Marvel, Batman, etc. What's the most you've been paid for a sponsorship today?
I think the highest for a single video was the semi-automatic baseball cannon sponsored by Xbox and MLB The Game, and I think that was $135,000.
Wow. And
because of that video, I broke my hand, and I've got a titanium plate and 5 screws in there. And if you ask me if I would do it again for $135,000, fuck no.
Yeah, I know we talked about that during our tour yesterday, and just do you ever get scared about putting yourself in harm's way with your videos? Because some of these, it looks like you're risking your life.
I don't think I've ever really risked my life. We do obviously play up the danger because that's entertainment. We joke because I am the main stuntman, because you would never ask an employee to do something dangerous.
Right.
ironically, I'm also the most valuable employee at the company. So if you look at our life insurance policies, me getting hurt is actually really bad for the company.
Yeah.
But having an employee hurt could be even worse. So typically that's why you'll see me take the hits and whatnot. And I do enjoy at least part of it.
So I pulled these graphs of how you make money as a YouTuber over the years. Can you give us a rough breakdown? What was a pie chart of how the Hacksmith makes money in 2020, and what is it now, especially now that you have products like coming out on hacksmith.store? If you're watching the video this far, you're gonna love our newsletter, Created News. Just go to created.news, and every week you'll get a breakdown of the best thumbnails on YouTube and why they got you to click. You'll get a breakdown of the best outliers and top videos and why they got you to watch, and you'll get the latest in news for creators, why it matters, and how to make sense of it. Again, just go to created.news, and it's gonna be the best email you're gonna get in your inbox every week, I promise.
Right. So if you look in 2019, it's probably like a 60-40 split sponsorships to YouTube revenue. And then in 2020, it was almost like 40-40 and then another 20 with everything else. And that was mostly because of the lightsaber video. Our channel got the most views that year. So obviously AdSense added up.
Yeah. Do you remember how much, like ballpark?
Probably like a few $1 million in ad revenue.
Oh.
Maybe like 2
million in AdSense.
Probably.
And what was overall in 2020?
Oh, it would have been like 4.5.
Yeah. It was at the best year of revenue to date.
Might have been 2021. Yeah, but the pie chart stayed fairly consistent. Like sponsorships made up a big portion.
Yeah.
We started Hacksmith Store, I think in 2020 technically. And just last year now, it accounted for 50% of our gross revenue.
Wow.
Which was truly incredible, and we're so grateful for that. It was a historically very bad year for YouTube views and sponsorship money. So it doesn't actually compare to some of our previous years. But it's definitely a good start.
Yeah.
And the tricky thing with that is most of that came from the Mini-Saber sales.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
But you can't expect to have outlier products all the time.
Yeah.
So we recognize that this isn't like a permanent thing. Like we're going to keep selling it, obviously, but the demand isn't going to be like it was when we first sold it and whatnot. So, for example, this year, ad revenue has been garbage. We've posted a lot less videos, gotten a lot less views. I'd say ad revenue in 2023 was probably like maybe 150 grand. Our monthly overhead's 300.
Wow.
So not even enough to cover 2 weeks of existing.
Wow.
Sponsorships certainly helped. And last year, it was actually the first time we did a bit of engineering on the side. Because people often ask like, oh, you guys must do something to make real people money, right? Like consulting, engineering, military contracts, all these things. Like, no, just YouTube. And most of the time it's because YouTube can be quite lucrative. But the other challenge that we've had, again, I talked about like exponential success is great, but it also your focus is in one area. So we would turn down smaller paying jobs and things because it didn't make sense when we could work on YouTube videos. But the problem is, to start any new business, you got to start somewhere.
Right. So
some of those small paying jobs, it might not have been worth our time 3 years ago, but they could have grown into a business that could be even bigger than YouTube today. But because we were hyper focused just on YouTube, we were never able to take advantage of those opportunities. And even now, it's very hard to. We're very much up against the wall of having to make content just to exist. And it's a really painful position to be in, where it's like, I want to just make what I feel like making. And then there's a lot of doubt of like, even if I went back fully to my roots, I might still not be popular. I might still not get views because YouTube's changed as a platform. audience appetite for this kind of thing has changed. Especially with being a channel that's been going on for 9 years full time, your audience ages out. And unless you're replacing that aging out audience with new audience, that's why you'll see a lot of big channels start to slip and fail, because they've either tried doing something else because they were tired of whatever they were doing, but they don't find the same success doing it, and then it feels like a very slippery slope when the YouTube algorithm notices. It's just like, well, your videos haven't been getting many views, we're going to show them to less people. And that's the fear I live with every day, not knowing what our future has in store on YouTube. And that's why we're trying to build up Hacksmith Store and other businesses that can help be more like a brick and mortar kind of like solid, sustainable thing.
So many takeaways from that. Like, one, I think like when you're building a company as a YouTuber, sometimes the work that you resist, like for me, like, you know, I want to just focus on the videos, but we get a lot of consulting work and agency work. And I'm like, you know what, for the exact same reason that you said, like, I should keep diversifying the business, because the videos and the sponsorships, you know, that could go up and down. And so I mean, I got to give credit to my wife and business partner, Amanda, who's like, okay, let's keep growing the consulting side while we grow the video side and invest in that, so we have something going. But the other thing that I want to dive into in terms of your business is the sponsorships and then the products, because I think you're doing things that are so innovative there that, again, so many YouTubers can learn from. On the sponsorship side, I have to ask, how many times do you work with movie studios on videos? Because it to me seems like such a win-win that, like, if there's a movie that's in production for 3-4 years, something like that, like ahead of time, that there's at least some kind of conversation with the billions of views that you've gotten of, hey, let's have the Hacksmith make an item from this movie ahead of time and then line it up with the trailer release. Like, YouTube is a bigger part of the strategy of studios. Do you find that's happening, or do you find they're still stuck in the Stone Ages?
It does feel like YouTube is still the last platform companies think about. So what we find usually is when we do work with movie studios, and we've worked with probably dozens over the years, is it's in that last like month to weeks before the movie comes out. And it's almost as if, all right, whatever we can dredge out of the advertising budget that we haven't spent yet, let's throw it at YouTube. And the problem with our projects especially is they take a lot longer. So a great example is the Bulletproof John Wick suit. We started that project as a passion project. We plan to release it near John Wick 4 because that's an easy way to kind of capitalize on SEO and people already searching for John Wick and whatnot. And in the middle of that, actually, I took my break and I stepped back from YouTube and we put it on the back burner. And then the movie was coming up. It was closer. And I'm like, no, I don't feel like finishing it. And then 2 weeks before the movie comes out, the production company that made John Wick 4 reaches out and they're like, you know, it'd be really cool. Can you make a bulletproof Kevlar suit in 2 weeks and post it in 2 weeks? And the approvals, our legal department, all that. And I was like, well, you're lucky. I've actually spent the past 2 years doing this. And it worked out, but obviously that's not an ideal way to do it. And the only reason that video did so well is because in the video you can see how much work we put in. Because the reality is, in another timeline, alternate dimension, I didn't make the suit, but they reached out and were like, "Respond to this." I'm like, "I got you, fam." Go to the suit store, buy a suit. Go to wherever you would buy a bulletproof vest from. Take some scissors, cut it open, sew it inside the suit. Bada bing, call it a day. I would have achieved the same goal of making a bulletproof suit, but that's an extremely low effort video, and there's no way that video would have done nearly as well. We went to the gun range dozens of times because we actually developed our own composites, working with manufacturers who make the materials used for bulletproof vests and whatnot. And then the actual tailoring of the suit, I think, was a solid 2 months of work. Wow. If I had to guess, the suit probably cost over $50,000 to make, not including materials, because we actually worked with those companies and they gave us the materials for free. And the other issue we have is, yes, we've worked with all these production companies. We've only worked with one person at these movie studios, and there are such big companies, and sometimes it's actually an external agency. So just because we've worked with Warner Brothers before, we've worked with 20th Century before, it doesn't mean we work with. And I don't know what level of connection you need to get to, where either I know someone high up and it's just like, this is a goal, like the Hacksmith is involved with every project, every movie release or something. I don't know how to get into the right room where I could meet those people, and because it really is a match made in heaven, and we could do some really incredible things that could potentially really bolster movies, especially like with the example of the John Wick video. It did 10 million views in 1 week. In the same amount of time, the movie did 140 million at the box office. If you take an average ticket price of about $10, everything with inflation, that's 14 million views.
Yeah.
So we were almost 1-to-1 parity with Hollywood, with a $200 million budget movie.
Yeah.
Ours was free to watch, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that video took some fans who were like, maybe I'll see it too. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go see that. And I think there's so much value there. And I would love to get a better relationship with all of the big movie companies out there, because it would also allow us to focus on some of these really cool projects that I'm passionate about, because doing all this is because I love movies. Like, I'm a huge movie buff. Obviously, I love the superhero genre, and I've kind of built up this persona of the Hacksmith as kind of being this real life Tony Stark, MacGyver, Captain America, Batman,
right?
You name it, kind of character. And
I think that the two things from that, on the sponsor side and the fact there's turnover, I think for any creator, like we see that as well. We have a relationship with the brand managers, not just the brands. And whenever you get that dreaded out of office message, you know, when you follow up, you're like, oh my God, they don't work at the company anymore. I don't know if this is just a us thing, but one tip perhaps for other creators is that we send like our recap report that we send after a brand deal or sponsorship to the other folks who may have been on the thread, and just say, hey, like we saw that this person like had a bounce back message. I don't know if they're working at the company anymore, but here are some of the results of the past campaigns. We'd love to work with you guys moving forward.
Yeah,
and so it just plants the seed, because like there's always movement, rotation. And then I'll also add the brand manager who left that company on LinkedIn, just so they could keep us in mind for future stuff. But it's funny to hear it in your situation, because I think you represent the extremes that we could still learn from. Because I also think about that Captain America Wakanda shield. That, correct me if I'm wrong, you made that from just watching 3 seconds of a trailer, like no heads up from the studio.
Yep.
And then you went into a year of making that
I don't think it took that long. That was probably only a few months.
A few months, but you're studying the frames. Like from the trailer, because you have no other source material. Like, I know Marvel is big, but still, like, you know, they have a marketing budget and dedicating it to.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to sign any NDAs. if I get to see movies earlier. Lately, I've found, at least on my Instagram following, which is about 1 million, I get invited to movie premieres in Toronto. I don't get paid for it, but I love going to movies.
Yeah,
and it's an early screening of the movie. I'm like, I'm down.
Yeah,
I love going to the theater.
Yeah. And or even just putting a creator in the room or somebody creative, I feel like there's untold possibilities of what seeing something will trigger in terms of what you make, either as a product or a video, which I think is so inspiring.
I mean, that's the other thing, like for any of these big movies that we've made projects from, especially the lightsaber.
Yeah.
I would roll out the red carpet for any actor from any of the Star Wars movies if they wanted to drop by and play with a real lightsaber.
Yeah.
And I guarantee they'd have an amazing day.
Yeah.
But reaching those people is really hard to do. And I'm sure some of them have stumbled across a video on YouTube and maybe have seen this, but they might not know that, like, I would literally roll out the red carpet for them. I'd show them a great time and let them play with a lightsaber or whatever else. But it's so hard to reach people in Hollywood because there's basically walls of people whose sole job is almost to block you from connecting with these people. You got your managers, your agents, and all that stuff. So that's definitely a big pain point too, where it's just like, I'm not some crazy fan who just wants to meet you for meeting you. It's like, no, I made something from a movie, which I think you liked because you were in the movie and do you want to see it in real life? Like, for example, the Power Loader. I'd love to get Sigourney Weaver here. Like, she's getting a bit old. She's in her 70s, but you drove it yesterday.
Oh,
and I bet she could beat you. So
yeah, she would kick my ass.
And same thing with like James Cameron. Like, the guy in his spare time uses a submarine to visit the Marianas Trench. He is an eccentric billionaire, and he obviously loves mechs because in Avatar there's a mech, in Aliens they had the Power Loader and whatnot. I like to think he probably hasn't seen it because that seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to see a real-life mech? Where else can you see that? You know. So if anyone's watching who has James Cameron's phone number, let me know.
Do you feel like being based out of Canada, just outside of Toronto, versus in Los Angeles or New York, like, plays a role in that? I'm curious because I bet there's people listening to this. I grew up in Chicago, and I was like, you know what, like LA is where I need to be to, you know, grow my career as a creator. Maybe I was wrong, but you've done it outside of Toronto. Yet hearing you say a lot of these things is interesting. Do you feel like your location plays any role in that as a creator?
Yeah, I feel like doing what we do, being in LA would probably make things a bit easier. Every now and then I do get invited to premieres and things in LA, and I can't always say yes because it's a long way from here. And especially for A-list celebrities and whoever else, time is money, and no one has time. Like, it takes a lot of effort to fly across the country to do this thing or whatever. So I think it probably would be a lot easier. But you saw Herc.
Oh yeah.
This is an experience. Like, this doesn't exist anywhere else. So I'd love to have the opportunity to show some people, and it has nothing to do with, oh, you're famous, I want to meet you, I want your autograph. There's none of that. It's just like, I really respect what you've done.
Yeah.
I respect your talent, the things you've been involved with, and I would love to share what I've done that's connected to you.
Yeah. I mean, if it blew my mind to hold the lightsaber that you made, I can't imagine what
I can just imagine, like, seeing Mark Hamill's face light up.
Yeah.
Would be incredible. That would be like a memory for a lifetime.
I'm putting it out there. I think it's going to happen.
I
think
so.
You're going to make it happen, and just putting good vibes out there. Tell me about the Mini-Saber. This is one of the most successful products you've sold on Hacksmith.store. How many units of this, and how much do you make off of that item? And maybe just show us how it works. It's like,
so at the end of the day, it is a butane torch lighter. It's like a propane torch in handheld form. And then we also have color changers. So this will actually turn a nice bright red. We also have green. We're working on yellow and purple. But yeah, so the inspiration for this obviously came from us doing lightsabers.
Yeah.
But even before that, I had discovered a jet lighter like this from China that I ordered on AliExpress probably like 8 years ago. And I got it, and it was amazing. I'm just like, wow, this is the coolest lighter ever. I've never had a blowtorch that you can put in your pocket. And I saw that there was a gap in the market. It was just like, the only way to get this right now is from AliExpress. It takes a month shipping, or from very scam-like Instagram ads. Because there's a lot of scams on the internet now, and especially with shopping and buying things. So I was like, maybe I could import them and sell them, offer 2-day shipping like Amazon, and actually offer like a guarantee that you're going to get it, a warranty, and offer it as a product. So we white labeled Mini-Saber Gen 1. So we put our name on it, but we were very transparent on our website. We're working with this company. You can buy it elsewhere, but we sell it.
Right.
And the benefit you get from buying from us is you'll actually get fast shipping. It's guaranteed to work. We have a warranty, all kinds of stuff like that. Right. And the original Mini-Saber did quite well because, again, it was a quality product I had found that I do actually use. Yeah. And I think we probably sold 10,000 of those at least over a few years. Wow. But as soon as we started to see that success, we're like, okay, we got to design our own. We got to use this core technology and make one that looks like our proto lightsaber. So that process took almost 2 years. From doing design, finding the manufacturer, working with the manufacturer, and whatnot. And when we finally did release it, it blew all of our expectations out of the water. When we did the Kickstarter campaign for it, we did $1 million gross sales in 1 month.
Wow.
Which was huge.
Wow.
That was going on one of our best months of all time, like across YouTube and everything else. And then when we finally released it, like we actually got them in, because we had some issues with quality control at first, and it took a while for us to actually ship those first units. But when we finally had them in stock, we did an actual release video where they were in stock and you could actually buy it. And we sold out within a week, even though we ordered like 10,000 of them. We did $1 million in 1 week.
Wow.
Which was incredible. And that's really when we realized that, why are we advertising other people's stuff? We should advertise our own stuff. True vertical integration.
Yeah.
Why can't we be the manufacturer, the distributor, the advertising machine, the marketing machine, all those things together? I think I gave an example during the tour, but if you can assume a very basic ad revenue of $1,000 a million views, and then a sponsorship usually is at least 10 times that, $10,000. So that means if you're not doing sponsorships, you're potentially leaving 10 grand on the table and only making 1. When we launched this Mini-Saber, in the first 4 hours, we did 400,000 views, which resulted in $400,000 of gross sales. So $1 per view.
Wow.
Whereas ad revenue, $1 per 1,000 views.
Wow.
And that was like a big light bulb moment where it's like, why are we advertising other people's stuff? If we could just come out with awesome products like this, we wouldn't have to worry so much about money or making videos and all that. So I'm already starting to work on the Gen 3 version of this, which will be even better.
That's insane. And the money from this is also going to help fund the first retractable cordless lightsaber that you're working on. And you showed us during the tour.
Every single Mini-Saber we sell includes a little challenge coin that has the Hacksmith logo on one side, Herc, and on the other side it says, I helped develop the world's first lightsaber.
Wow.
And it's not referring to the thing we already did, because that was a proto-lightsaber.
Yeah.
It's referring to...
Proto being the one with the backpack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's referring to what we're currently working on and what we're using a good portion of the profits from this to develop. And the reason we have to do that is because the only way to get the fuel and oxidizer into a handle is to use liquid oxygen. Now, liquid oxygen is cryogenic, so you can literally get frostbite just holding the thing. It makes things that are flammable more flammable. It makes things that aren't flammable flammable, and it makes stuff explosive. If you build it wrong, it quite literally would be a pipe bomb. So the reason we need the clean room is if there's any hair follicles, skin cells, dust, a hair, whatever, inside one of those components that the liquid oxygen is running through, and as it's expanding, it can potentially cause an ignition, and then the whole thing explodes.
Wow.
So we've built a clean room here in order to continue developing this liquid oxygen project, despite it being pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
We were able to save quite a bit of money researching and designing and building our own clean room. I think the total cost was well over $100,000. But to put that in perspective, if you hired a company that specializes in building clean rooms for companies, you're probably looking at a price tag 10 times that.
Wow.
Like $1 million or more. And I'm excited to say we are actually getting extremely close to doing some first tests. It'll last for about 2 minutes, which isn't very long, but still, no hoses. Look, Mom, no hose.
Yeah.
And it's going to be pretty incredible. My fear is the main first video we did on the technology went mega viral. Everyone on the internet saw it. It's got like 50 million views now. Every lightsaber video we've released since then has been diminishing returns. And now some of those videos don't even get 1 million views. Even though we've put all this time, energy, and money into designing this fully cordless thing, from a thumbnail standpoint, it looks the exact same as everything else we've already done. So I feel like we've almost shot ourselves in the foot by doubling down on lightsaber content over the years. And if we had just posted that one video, let it go viral, and been like, okay, let's work on the next iteration. And then finally, a few years later, come out with this. I suspect there'd be a much better chance for that video to go mega viral and really make a splash.
Wow.
But today I'm feeling pretty pessimistic, and lately. And I'm like, I don't know if this video will even get 1 million views, despite all this work, all this effort we've put into it. And for the people who have bought the Mini-Saber, in addition to getting the coin, they've gotten access to our lightsaber update videos. Because we knew, okay, well, we can't post low effort update videos, but the true fans who are really excited about this, we can share with them. So Bogdan's been doing weekly updates for the past year. So you can actually see all the work that's gone into building the lightsaber. And we'll probably grab some of that footage throughout when we finally put together that real video that we released to the general audience, the main public. But I would be pleasantly surprised if it performed very well. I am highly doubtful it will.
Dude, it is mind-boggling to hear you talk about building a product that we've only seen in movie screens and our imagination, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop a room that like basically is the same thing that surgeons use to use
Cleaner, actually.
Cleaner than the operating rooms that surgeons use to do open heart surgery. Like you've developed that here on this campus, and we had that as part of our tour. And in the same sentence, talk about the YouTube thumbnail for that video.
And the fact that if we don't have it, we don't have a thumbnail, because we've already used every variation of that already. Like if you look at the Proto-Lightsaber thumbnail, we edited out the cord, so we fucked up. We already used the banger thumbnail for this thing that that we're still developing.
I think people are still going to be interested, and maybe there's like a Star Wars tie-in, or like Mark Hamill sees it, or I don't know, but that also
it puts extreme pressure on even producing the video too.
Yeah,
because I'm like, I need to have a really good video, because if I can't rely on the thumbnail, the video needs to be really good. So to the general audience watching, you might be like, well, why bother building the clean room or spending all this money and time developing something that you don't even think the video is going to do well? And I ask myself that question every day. Part of it is lightsabers and mini-sabers have historically worked really well for us. I personally feel like we've kind of flogged lightsabers to death, and I would actually love to move on with my life and work on other things. But the challenge when you've made the pinnacle of sci-fi technology is like, what else is there? You know? So back to the example of like ad revenue versus sponsorship versus revenue from selling something.
Yeah.
So again, when we saw those sales from this, 1,000-fold ad revenue, even if these lightsaber videos continue to get less and less views, there's still the potential, if it's a quality product and you have a core audience base, even if that lightsaber video gets 100,000 views, it might still sell $1 million worth of mini-sabers.
Yeah.
So it's still worth doing.
Yeah. I wanted to dive into your brainstorming process, because during the tour, we also got to go into one of your meeting rooms here. We saw like these different T-sheets on the board, which was one side a drawing of a rough thumbnail, the other side a description. And obviously you have to build the product with your team to be in the video. How do you think about what makes a good YouTube video today?
When you have a series called Make It Real and you're trying to create things from fiction, it's got to have a good outcome. It's got to pay off. I like to ask the question, like, if you ask an 8-year-old child what having this item from this video game in real life would be like, they would tell you, it's got to do this, it's got to do that, it's got to do this. If we fail to do any of those things, the project might be a letdown, and the video might be a letdown, and the audience might be let down. And that's a cascading effect. And you can only do that so much before the audience is like, why would I watch another video? I think some of the initial draw in the garage days, I had the relatability of being in a garage. I was a pretty young kid. I mean, I was 26, not even that young. And it was very much like I was making projects that allowed me to look like a superhero. And anytime we've tried to do more traditional YouTube trend videos, like the internet seems obsessed with really big things and really small things. And we're like, we're engineers, we can build a really big thing. But anytime that we've not done like a make it real, those videos have not really done well. So we almost have this core topic, which is make it real, which is what people expect of us.
Yeah.
And the challenge we've had is when we don't have enough time to work on something, or sometimes we greenlight something that isn't that impressive. It's just like the average viewer is like, what are you doing? Like, you've got this incredible facility and all these resources and you made this. And I'm not saying all of our projects are bad. I'm just saying there are projects where it's just like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that. But hindsight's 2020. Right. You might think it's the best idea at the time, and then you're like, The big one for me is like, no one likes dedicated sponsorships unless, literally, I feel like the only exception is unless it's from a movie or unless it's from a really big video game IP. But even in that case, it has to be the thing from that video game IP that people would most like to see.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. Amazon Prime recently sponsored us to promote the new Fallout TV show, which is fantastic. And I'm not just saying that because they sponsored us. But the problem was they pushed and they wanted us to build a rad roach, just a giant cockroach that was remote controlled. I guarantee if you asked any one of my subscribers what they want me to see built from Fallout, it's not the rad roach. That's a prop at best.
Yeah.
It's not like if we could have genetically engineered and grew a giant cockroach, sure, that video, even though it's not what they wanted to see, that's like, holy shit, what the fuck did you do? I'm scared. If Hacksmith goes evil, the world has problems. But if you asked anyone, they'd want us to build the power armor, the full exoskeleton suit, or on a lower level, maybe the Pip-Boy, a functional supercomputer on your wrist, or literally any weapon from Fallout.
Yeah. And
we pushed back a little bit, but they're like, no, we want to do this. We want to blah, blah, blah. And we needed the money to keep doing what we're doing. And it was one of our worst performing videos of all time. And that really hurts. And even beyond that, what's the damage of doing a poor video?
Yeah.
One that people didn't want to see.
Yeah.
How much does that impact your channel and the YouTube algorithm?
Wow. I mean, I think there's so much there, like in terms of letting the creator create and not like being too prescriptive. Yeah.
And just to clarify real quick,
yeah,
my team did an incredible job building that rad roach. It's super realistic.
Of course.
It took a lot of engineering to do.
Yeah.
Not just anyone could have even done what we did, but the problem was the idea was almost destined to fail before we even started. Doesn't matter how much you polish a turd.
Yeah, once it's going down the wrong way.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, you've had conversations with MrBeast. I think there's a lot of parallels here. Like he has a campus, like you have a campus, like he has a big team, you have a big team. I have a few questions. One, I heard this quote where you guys were talking and he basically said to you, like, do you hate views? Or what was the context of that? Why did MrBeast say that to you?
Yeah, so I think that was about 2 years ago. He had asked us to make some lightsabers for video. Also only gave us 2 weeks notice, but we pulled it together. We did it. I think he had less than 50 million subscribers back then. So he was busy, but probably not as busy as he is today. So there's a bit of downtime and we're hanging out, playing basketball and stuff. And then it was more so he was just like being polite and hanging out with us. And then I told him about Herc, and his ears kind of perked up and he's just like, you doing what? Because not many YouTubers have a campus. There's MrBeast, there's Dude Perfect, maybe Linus Tech Tips kind of, and us, as far as I know. And suddenly he was interested. So we were sitting on his couch. He pulled up my channel on the TV, and very quickly I was like, ooh, watch this video. I want to see your reaction to this video. And he's like, no. I'm like, why not? And he's like, you can't cherry pick your videos. They should all be good. So then he started picking the videos that he wanted to watch, and he'd maybe give a video sometimes as little as 5 seconds. And it was like in Gladiator where it's just like, yay or nay. And that's because the hook is so important. And he's like, oh, that was pretty good. Like, I can see why that video got views. Or, no shit, that video didn't get views. So it was harsh feedback, but it made sense, right? And at some point, he was like, do you hate views? Do you hate views? And I guess my default excuse is we put ourselves in this position where we have to make content. We're not necessarily always making the content we want to make. And that's resulted in not every video being great. To go a bit further with that, we did take that advice. And the MrBeast approach to videos is every video should be at least as good as the last one, ideally better. And it's paid off in spades for MrBeast. Like, the amount of views, no one's gotten views like MrBeast gets views. And we actually tried adopting that mindset. And we for the first time in 7 years, were like, all right, no more weekly content. And we did it for two reasons. One was because of the advice from MrBeast, and two, because I was crazy burnt out, super stressed from managing all these things. And the thought was, well, if we only worked on like one video every month or two, I could actually focus on one thing and we could be passionate about that thing that we're doing. And unfortunately, this came at the time when we were also in the process of moving to this facility. Yeah. So we were already super busy, stressed, spending more money than we had ever done before. And we only did this experiment for maybe like not even half a year. The hope was we'd go from 4 videos a month to 1 video a month. And we knew it would be a slow climb. But looking at some of the outlier channels where it's just like video after video gets tens of millions of views, if we could have gotten to that, then the business would have been a lot more sustainable. Yeah. But we couldn't afford to keep trying. And in that 6 months, we didn't have a single video pop off, even though we were putting more effort in. And if I look back, there's a few mistakes that maybe cost us that strategy. But the reality was we hit a wall where we had gone from a certain number of views a month to 25% of the views. And when your entire business is based on YouTube, that essentially meant we took a 75% cut to our income, which made it very unsustainable, like not even break even most of the time. And ever since then, since it didn't work, we still try and be super selective with our videos, and we try not to make videos that we think are going to hurt the channel long term. But we haven't even been able to get back up to weekly content since then, even though we did it for 7 years. And there's some videos where it's just like, man, we made better videos back then. And it's this constant doubting of what you're doing, because it's really hard to look at the big picture, especially with YouTube, when you live and die by each video. And like, if you get a few bad videos in a row, it's like, well, game over. Yeah. Let's pack up. We're done. And then you get a good video and you're like, oh. And I've seen these hilarious graphs talking about being a YouTuber, and it's just like the highs are really high and the lows are really low. And it's like, we're back, baby. And then it's like, no, we're not. No, we're not. Oh God, the world is ending. Hey. And it's just like, it just plays with you, and it goes up and down and up and down. And that's so hard to run a business when you don't know this. And again, hindsight's 20/20. It's just like, I feel like I could have made better decisions that could have put us on a better path a long time ago. And now we're battling a lot of these potential mistakes that we've made over the years. And sometimes it feels pretty dire. And it's really hard because it's not just me. This company supports 27 families. It's people's livelihood, you know? And I do believe what we're doing has a big impact on the world. And like, I think I'm a good role model, but if I'm not reaching an audience, I'm not being a role model. So there's all these there's a lot of doubt. Yeah. And I think that's one of the worst parts of YouTube, because everyone can point at the big shiny channels, and it's just like, oh, look, they're doing it. And then every other channel where it's just like, you're fighting tooth and nail to to stay relevant. And I hate the idea of a popularity game. I really don't want to play that game. I want to be able to do this, and I think there's an audience there, but if we're not able to do it the size that we used to do it, how do we go about doing it at a lower size? Like in my back pocket, I was always like, well, if everything goes to shit, we can shrink down, cut our costs. It could go back to me essentially being in the garage and just making stuff for fun. Because the reality is, like, everything I've done, even residual ad revenue, it should be enough to support me for the rest of my life if I don't have high costs. But the fear there is, if the channel tumbles and it doesn't pick back up, even if we cut costs and then I try and do it myself, ideally it climbs back up because I'm the reason it grew in the first place. But I have so much doubt that I could even do that today, where it might be this depressing thing where it's just like, well, I've cut all the costs, everyone's gone, I don't even have this property anymore, and now the videos I'm making are doing worse and worse. And it's like this channel death where it's just like, and like, how can that not be attached to your ego? How can that not be like, well, fuck the dog on that one, you know?
Part of that also comes from nobody talking about what you just said. Like, I think the whole narrative out there is that bigger is better, do fewer uploads. But the truth is, we don't always know what better is. And sometimes quantity helps you understand what quality is.
Like, honestly, I'm envious of the few channels that manage to keep it super simple. And literally, you pop up a handy cam and you're filming what you do. And maybe someone edits it and makes it a little shiny. But it's literally just, you're doing the thing anyways. That was always the goal. I want to be doing the thing, regardless of whether a camera's rolling. But I think a camera should be rolling. Because it's probably pretty interesting what I'm doing. And I feel like it would be a lot more enjoyable life if it was just like, yeah, the videos are super low effort. Like, we don't spend much time or money on them, but it's documenting what we're doing and we're having a fun time doing it.
Yeah.
And that's another, like, I guess almost like dream perspective of what I'd like YouTube to be for me again.
Yeah.
Because even though when I was small and not making money from YouTube, I was still doing it because I wanted to do it. I wanted to share my story.
I think that's one of the most honest things I've heard. And honestly, I feel like we don't hear that enough in conversations with top creators and advice that they give. I wanted to ask, in so many ways, you check the boxes of what a national and international headline and story should be. I mean, you have a product with millions of dollars in sales. You have a YouTube channel with over 10 million subscribers. You have this crazy campus that, like, again, like, it blew my mind when we spent 14 hours here yesterday. You have an inspiring educational story. Why do you feel like more people aren't talking about you?
To me, I feel like back in the first 4 years when everything was growing, that was like prime time to keep things growing. And maybe there was certain decisions we could have made back then that would have meant by today I'd be as big as MrBeast. Who knows? But those are all what ifs, and you can't dwell on what ifs. Again, a lot of it I feel like stems back to, we set the bar too high and we've done too many projects that don't meet the bar. So we've lost some of that original allure that we had. I think it's very challenging to try and regain that. You almost need this like actual like rebirth, resurrection arc. And as much as I'd love to have that resurrection arc after, say, my video announcing a break, I haven't really had it because things haven't really changed. I'm kind of in the exact same position I was before I made that video, which is burnt out, scared, uncertain about the future, uncertain of the business, whether or not I'm a good entrepreneur. And that's a very challenging thing to break past. So while I would love to have success like MrBeast, I understand why I don't. And that kind of hurts, because it's like, I know there's a part of me that could be that successful. And I don't know why I haven't, like, whether it's decisions I've made, that's killer, is because it's like, I know I'm a talented person. Seeing Herc and seeing the inside, I know I have talent, so I still have confidence in myself, and I know I can achieve more, and I know I can succeed more if I want to. And I feel like it's almost like a tug of war of, do I even want to? And can I? Because I've built this business that didn't enable me to flourish, which means it's very, like, how do you get out of that? Do you say, fuck it, I'm sorry, everyone, you're all fired, I need some time off, and the only way I'm going to get time off without losing everything is to temporarily lose everything. But I can't take that risk, because I don't want to fire. Like, firing people sucks. We had to do layoffs once, and that was the worst thing I've ever been through. And it's really hard when you're putting the needs of the team above your own.
For what it's worth, I think you're one of the smartest people I've met, and empathetic. And I think it's also rare to find somebody who is as good at engineering as they are at branding and storytelling. Can you talk about, like, the Hacksmith brand, like how you think about it? Take me into the future of the Hacksmith.store. Like, how do you think your brand and where you're going will evolve from here?
Becoming a bigger brand in the product space. I truly believe in the products we're developing, going with premium quality and really making useful things. Like, I love the EDC carry, like everyday carry. That's why I'm working on the Smith pants prototype that I'm wearing, because I believe these are the best pants you'll ever wear. It's a pretty hard thing to actually sell. But getting outside of YouTube, and especially even just seeing something that you designed in a store, I feel like that's one of the big goals of lots of engineers, where it's just like, I designed that, and hey, look, there it is. And we're not quite there yet, but I hope we get there. And on a much larger scale, again, like in my master plan, I hope that one of these days we'll come up with something that actually, like, makes a difference, changes the world. Originally, because of all the Tony Stark connections and whatnot, I'm like, exoskeletons are so cool. Can I please become the company that makes badass exoskeletons so I can live out this Tony Stark fantasy? And the reality is, exoskeletons are really, really hard. Where the technology is finally catching up, like seeing all, like, the humanoid robots. If you can make a humanoid robot, you can make an augmented human too. And the stuff like that excites me, and I feel like I derive a lot of passion from doing something like that. That's really meaningful. So, like, our recent video where we gave a YouTuber in the UK a bionic hand, that was really amazing. And just like, we should do more stuff like this, because beyond the video, this is really cool to do, and probably has a much bigger impact than what we normally do and whatnot.
Can you tell me about an interaction you've had with a fan? Because I think your fans are so different in that you change their mind about engineering, about STEM, about their career choices. What's a conversation you've had with a fan that's stuck with you?
Yeah, so when Ian and I started all this back in the beginning, it was just because we wanted to build cool shit. And very shortly after publishing cool shit on the internet, we started to get comments from kids and even adults being like, I didn't know engineering could be cool. That's really neat. Maybe I'll be an engineer. So we started seeing these comments where it's just like, we've inspired people to go to engineering school or to get into STEAM, science, technology, engineering, the arts, math, all that stuff. And now that we've been doing it for so long, we started getting comments, and I've met fans in person where it's just like, yeah, I used to watch you back in high school. You really inspired me to go to engineering school. I went to engineering school for 4 years, and I graduated. And now I've been working my dream job for 2. It makes me feel really old, but it makes me feel like, holy shit, I really made an impact and made a difference. And then there was this one time in person at a convention. It felt like this guy was buttering me up. He's just like, changed my life so much, all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's incredible. I'm just like, and then I was asking him, I'm like, what do you think of my videos lately? And he's like, I haven't watched anything since I was 16. And I'm like, what? You just told me how like inspirational I was and how you love my videos, and now you're telling me you don't even watch them. And that was when I realized that all it takes is one video to change someone's life. And in that person, I had created a lifelong fan just from one video. And I think we usually get stuck as YouTubers where it's just like, we want all subscribers to watch all videos because we always just needs to be a bigger number, need to make more views. But having that interaction made me realize it doesn't fucking matter. I've already made content that has changed lives and is continuing to change lives. And I really should be proud of that instead of being like, oh, but I need more views. And realizing that that's all it takes sometimes is just one video to change someone's life is really powerful. And I think you can do that when you're doing educational content, when you're doing inspirational things, because really it's all about letting people dream bigger, giving them permission to dream bigger, and showing them that it's possible. And I think that's really powerful.
Dude, I feel like you've inspired me to dream bigger, and thank you for being so transparent with your answers about your business, your mental health, and just so generous with your time, James. I'm blown away, man. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.